And it looks like we are live. Mr. Gary Baker, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing good, Matt. How you doing, buddy? Thanks for having me on your channel.
You know, we've been doing this live streaming here. Relatively new. It's always been the Blasters, Madam and Master Blaster. And we've had a wonderful time. But tonight, Master Blaster's out in the field playing Air Force. I saw him. He's in camouflage and has all types of military equipment around him. He looks like he's having a great time. But Gary, whenever it came time to think about, hey, who should I have on the show? You know, it was a no-brainer. I had to get my buddy, Gary B, the casual comic guy. So, Gary, can you tell some people who might not be familiar with your channel, which I don't know, I think everybody is, but just in case there isn't, let them know who you are.
Well, obviously, I'm Gary B. So the channel is really relaxed, right? Obviously, the casual guy, but we also like to keep it savage over there as well as casual. A big focus on Conan, Red Sonja, other savage characters such as Xena or the Atlas comics with Iron Jaw and characters like that, and Wolf the Barbarian. But also, we have a big focus on the women of Marvel, which I think are a big deal as well. So a lot of focus on Black Cat, Captain Marvel, Spider-Woman. But and also anything that's an old Marvel 4-issue miniseries, I'm an absolute sucker for. Bronze Age is where I live and die.
You know, you have such a great choice or great taste in comic books. And one character I did not hear you say, Savage She-Hulk, okay? Or just She-Hulk. I know that you're a big She-Hulk fan.
I am.
Yeah, and you've talked about her quite a bit. So now there's a couple things. Rob from Rob's Fat Stacks of Comics, he makes the comment, Gary likes the ladies, okay? So you like Conan and you like the ladies. So excellent. But all right, Gary. Now, for a lot of people in the, I'm going to go through and I'm going to acknowledge the chat, and then we're going to start telling some stories, okay?
Sounds good.
Let's see who's all here. Oh, going all the way up to the top. The highest I can go. I got my good buddy, Doug Bratton, okay? Excellent guy right there. Looking forward to Isolation issue number 3, which is coming out. You guys, I'm going to do a shameless plug for Isolation. You can find copies and how to buy them on reggiecollects.com. That's 1G. But we have the incredible Tina right here. And Gary, Tina's already impressed. She thinks you're dressed up.
I live in button-ups. They're just comfy to me.
They are. I used to be a shirt and tie guy for work for years and years. I've kind of transitioned into the dressy polos, but now if I'm at home, I love t-shirts.
Right.
My buddy Rob
Boswell,
but my buddy Rob Boswell right here, who Rob came up with a great term that I absolutely love. On his wall, he has Slabtopia, okay? He has slabs everywhere on his walls.
Nice.
Okay? And this is one of my favorite human beings in the entire world, Trev, the shipping guru, who has an awesome YouTube channel. Guys, check him out. Do me a favor. Everyone in the chat, sub everybody up. Sub Gary up. Sub each other up. I'll let you know who has a channel. Tina needs to get a channel, okay?
Right.
Doug Bratton, I don't know. Doug Bratton's on a Reggie Collect show more than I think Reggie is. Rob's here. Everyone in the chat saying hi to each other. Oh, another great human being. My friend from the north up above, Mark Andrews. Okay. Mark is such an intelligent guy. Knows so much about comics. It looks like and here he is. I was looking for Seth because he made the very first comment in the live stream tonight, but it's glad to see you, Seth. Seth is from a great town of Wichita Falls. I spent a lot of time in Wichita Falls when I was in the Air Force. And Steve right here, a wonderful student, okay? How are you doing? Rob Boswell, Doug, Tina, Mark. All right, it looks like we still have some more comments here. All right, we got through all these, but Gary, a couple months ago, my son and I, I forgot about something, Gary. I have something for us here tonight. Something ready to go. Uh-oh.
I know I'm watching the background to see what pops on.
It's going to be cool, and it's going to be just made for this show. But let's see. Can I get to it? Oh, I had this so ready to go, and then right now I'm actually trying to figure out which remote control I need to use because I have two of them. But this may or may not work. I'll keep working on it while we talk. So anyhow, my son and I, we went up to the Seneca Nation Indian Reservation up in Salamanca, New York. And we went there to do some family, heritage type of stuff. And you don't live very far from Salamanca, New York. How far is Rochester from Salamanca?
I actually have no idea. I never looked it up.
I honestly think it was like about an hour and a half. But it is working in the background. Hopefully this live stream doesn't get shut down because of it, but I don't think it will.
Only if we can hear the music.
And I have it muted. But anyhow, Spencer and I, we decided, hey, we got to go meet Gary because you're just not far from there. And we had a great time. We met you in a lovely little diner. What was the name of that diner?
The Pepper Mill.
That was it. I was trying to remember that, and I couldn't remember it at all. But, you're a great human being. You treated me out to breakfast, which I absolutely love that. Thank you very much.
Well, you showed up with a slab too, though. You were also a great human.
But honestly, Gary, that was a great time just hanging out with you. But you took a photo, all right? And I texted that photo to my wife. My wife got me an awesome Christmas present where this was Spencer and I. I don't know. It's kind of hard to see.
Oh, no, it's showing up well.
Yeah, I have this in a nice little glass, I don't know what you call it, picture frame type of thing. But yeah, Gary took that picture of Spencer and I, and you can't tell in the background, but on Rhino's Comics on the side wall, there is a mural of the great Fantastic Four, I think number 12, Hulk versus Thing, cover. But Spencer was doing the Hulk and I was doing the Thing, so.
Yeah, and it came out really well for you guys, too.
Yeah, well, I had a great cameraman.
So. Trust me, that's probably the only good picture I've ever taken. I'm notoriously bad at taking photos.
Not really. But anyhow, everyone wants to know what got us into Conan. What makes Conan such a great, fun character? And I think we should talk about that. But Gary, can you give us a little history about how Conan the Barbarian got his start?
Sure. You mean for me personally?
Well, I did. That's, you know what? You want to do that a little bit later, but let's do the history of the character now. But I think telling our stories, how we got involved is kind of cool.
In the 30s, Robert E. Howard was selling to Weird Tales and other books, pulp books of that era. He had a lot of characters going, like Cull, like Solomon Kane, Bran McMorn, and just some boxing characters, and Steve Costigan, stuff like that. His Cull character, he was getting frustrated with. It just wasn't taking off the way he wanted, and he repurposed the story into a Conan story, and that story took off. And then Conan just became, for whatever reason, it was lightning. And a lot of people get Cull and Conan confused, and they're two very different characters with very different personalities. And those stories, they're magical.
They have a similar background story, but their personalities are different. Like you said, they really truly are two separate characters.
Right. Well, yeah, Cull was in exile. He was cast out. Conan left of his own accord because he just had the wandering spirit about him. And after he fought over the wall of Venarium and decided he was a wanderer.
Now,
go ahead.
I'm going to get a little goofy on you, okay? But Graham Hancock, who is a reporter that talks about ancient history and pre-civilization history. Listen, I don't know if Graham Hancock is on anything or not, but he's really popular now with his new Netflix show. Oh, I forget the name of it. Okay, but it talks about, you know, 10,000 years ago and all this, but and he talks about Atlantis, and is Atlantis a real place? I have no idea, and I'm not going to pretend that I do know if Atlantis was real, but Kaul was supposed to be the king of ancient Atlantis, and it's almost like Robert E. Howard and Graham Hancock got together and started making up this tale. So I think a lot of this, as I was watching that Netflix show, I was just thinking, like, how did Robert E. Howard have a little bit of foresight to imagine a world that somebody is talking about over 100 years later?
Well, I think Robert E. Howard was a big historian. He studied everything around him at the time. He was just from the little place, right? So he absorbed everything, worked, and the amount of stories he wrote in the short time he was around is amazing. He was very prolific.
Yeah. A lot of people in the audience, they don't know that Robert E. Howard, he suffered from depression, and he ended up taking his own life. Absolutely, unfortunately, because
Well,
he wasn't as well known in his lifetime as he ended up becoming. But looking back, the guy's imagination, his storytelling, absolutely on point. And, the Weird Tales stories came out, but then they kind of died off. But then in the 50s, they ended up starting to write new stories with different authors. And give me a couple of the authors' names that I forget off the top of my head that were writing the little Conan novels in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, you had L. Sprock de Camp and Lynn Carter who took over and they completed some stories that they found that weren't completed of Robert E. Howard's of Conan. And
Yeah.
but they were the main two that forwarded it. Then you had people like Steve Perry who wrote some, and now you're putting me on the spot. I have a
I
whole
know.
pulp section over there full of novels.
I am
And,
horrible of like coming up with things right on the spot, especially names like L. Sprang de Camp. I can't even pronounce the guy's name, so I always forget it. But what those guys did, though, is they revived interest in this character that had pretty much laid dormant since the 1930s. And then Roy Thomas wanted to get a new character in Marvel comic books. And didn't they want to do Lord of the Rings first before they did Conan?
what they wanted Thongor.
Thongor. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's yours.
But also we need to mention Frazetta because part of the reason those pulps popped was because of Frank Frazetta, and
Yeah.
that brought a bunch of people in just with his cover art alone on those pulp books.
Well, Frank Frazetta, which is horrible because I wore a shirt last week or some week, and I think it was a Franzetta painting that my wife and son got me for Christmas. They give me the best Christmas gifts, but but Frank Franzetta did some amazing artwork for those novels, and it really made them pop.
Well,
But
yeah, he made a lot pop. He did Conan, he did a bunch of Tarzan, he did some Buck Rogers, some Flash Gordon. He was just very prolific back then, and his artwork launched and revitalized a lot of titles again. But but Marvel wanted Thongor, but when they reached out to the owners, they Roy Thomas had a budget he had to stick to, and they could only offer, I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was like 150 a licensing fee per book, and Thongor, the owners there, wanted more, and they said no, and they turned it down. So Roy Thomas, on a whim, reached out to Glenn Lord, who was head of Conan Properties at the time, and Glenn Lord took less than that because he was a smart businessman. He knew that there was a big readership and that this would turn into keeping the property alive for the future and bringing more readers in. And I can tell you that that worked because the way I found Conan was through comics. The way I found Robert E. Howard was through Roy Thomas in comics, or else I would have never known about him, or at least not when I found out.
Yes. But no, I doubt I ever would have heard Robert E. Howard's name if it wasn't for Roy Thomas adapting his stories into comic books. Like he really truly, just made the character a lot more popular at a time. In fact,
And he
from
didn't even
the
like the
movie,
character at first.
what's that?
He said he didn't even like the character at first. He had bought a book. He read the
Oh,
first chapter and it didn't capture him right away, and he set it down. And it wasn't until years later when he was looking for another property, he picked it back up and then got hooked on it.
I never heard that story. I never knew that he didn't like the character.
Well, it's not that he didn't like it; it just didn't catch his interest at first. His first exposure to it. There's a great series of books he put out too called "The Barbarian Life." It's 3 volumes, and he takes you through the first 114 issues of Conan the Barbarian and the first 8 issues of King Conan, and a little bit of the Savage Tales and Savage Sword.
Okay.
And he gives you a little insight into each book that he worked on.
But I so well, now that we're talking comic books, Gary, do you have a specific comic book that just caught your interest of Conan?
Well, I'm not going to lead out with number one because that came out the year I was born, so that wasn't the one that caught my interest at first.
Okay.
The one that hooked me on the comic, and my introduction to Conan was my dad was given a box of comics by somebody, and he brought them home. There was some Conan in there. There was some Spider-Man, some Marvel Team Up, and some Brave and the Bold. And so that's what I had started reading. But the first book that really captured my attention was issue 100, which
Ooh, the
right
Death
here,
of Elite.
the Death of Belit.
That is, guys, Belit is Conan's number one love interest. Now, Valeria was another big interest, and he had many, momentary love interests, but the ones that actually, captured his attention. Belit was a she pirate. I don't know what a she pirate is, but that's what they always called her. But she was a pirate, and she was the captain of a ship that ended up pulling or taking over another ship that Conan was on. Well, Conan fought ferociously, and he gained her interest, and they had a great love story. Many different tales, but it lasted from issue 67 to 100. Is that how long she was in the original Conan the Barbarian
58
run?
through 100. So it
58.
was.
Yep.
Roy Thomas made a 3-year arc out of it, out of the one story Queen of the Black Coast, which he filled in the blanks in between, and made it a whole adventure. Because Belit in the Robert E. Howard tales is only in one story, but it's a very impactful story. And the thing that drew me in with this is Conan is this larger than life character, and part of the attraction of Conan is not only the adventure, but his pure will to live and survive. Oh, that's Conan the Destroyer. You don't have to edit that one.
Doug, I actually intentionally did not play Conan the Barbarian for that exact reason.
Yeah, Conan the Destroyer is friendly, but the interesting thing is Conan's not subservient to anyone, and Belit he was so enthralled with that he would suppress himself to obey her. And when the Tigris overthrew him in that ship, he was the only survivor of that ship, but he fought so violently that she fell for him right there. She did the mating dance of her people, and then it was her, him, and the Black Corsairs, and that's when he got the name Amra the Lion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Conan was a pirate for years, and he did have a nickname, Amor, which I think it translates to the lion. So
yep. It was funny because he was Amra, and Kull had the lion totem, and Kull had the tiger totem.
But, Joe, if you've never watched Conan the Barbarian, you gotta like it, but just have fun with the movie. Don't take it too critical, because as much as I love the movie, Gary, you'll agree with me. It doesn't really follow the storyline, and it's not the same
No,
character in the
it,
books.
right. It's not a true Conan movie. It's
No.
pieces of Cull, it's pieces of Conan, and it's pieces of other fiction that Robert E. Howard wrote.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
an amalgamation of things, but it's not a pure Conan tale.
no, definitely not. But it's still enjoyable. I don't know, every 3, 4, whatever years, I'll be bored of one afternoon. I'll be like, I'm watching Conan, and so it's still a good movie to me this day.
I actually watch Destroyer more than the original now. Just it's fun.
Really, I'm kind of shocked because
Well,
I'm not the biggest fan of Destroyer. Um, it's all right. It's a fun movie, but it was a complete kids writing. Like I was not a big fan of the storyline.
that's because they changed the script. There's actually a graphic novel out there, The Horns of Azeroth, which is the original script as written by Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway.
Yeah, I have that graphic novel in the little short boxes right behind me. These are magazine size short boxes, and I'm not going to go digging through there because I'm not sure if it's on top or bottom, but it's a really good graphic novel. But guys, as far as this being striked by YouTube, I'm sure it could be, but I don't think that little blip is going to get noticed by their computer.
It will only if they can tag the music.
Yeah, and I have the volume off, so I think we're good to go. Joe did watch it, he says. So anyhow, so Roy Thomas started writing a story. How popular was Conan in comic books back in the 1970s when it first came out?
Well, that's the thing. When it first came out, it wasn't very popular. It took it 8 issues to catch on. It almost got canceled around the 7th issue. Number 3, with the Grim Gray God, is actually a very low print run. That's why that book goes for like about $100 or more usually. But it struggled out of the gate, and for a title that struggled out of the gate, it caught its wind at issue 8. And then it just took off, and it became Marvel's most popular title over their superheroes even for years after that.
But Doug had a question. Was Barry Windsor Smith the original artist? Yes, he was.
Yep. He was the original Conan the Barbarian artist that got hired. He wasn't their first choice. Their first choice was John Buscema, but they couldn't afford him at the time. And Stan Lee wouldn't approve the budget to pay him to do Conan at that moment. So Roy Thomas reached out across the ponds, talked with Barry Windsor Smith, and they struck a deal. And for a while, they were actually mailing stuff back and forth overseas to each other. So it was very archaic how it was done, which is why you see some issues that'll have a reprint story in them.
Issue 18 is a reprint.
Right. It was supposed to be one tale. It ended up being a reprint because they needed more time.
Yeah.
With the mailing and the talking and the.
And you know what? I'm going to show off a book that I have here. Barry Windsor Smith. Nah, it's hard to get this without glare. Too many lights. Okay. But I'll be honest with you. This cover I love. And Barry Windsor Smith did a lot of great work on Conan the Barbarian. I'm a big fan. Not every issue is my favorite, but right. I'm not the biggest Barry Windsor Smith fan. What an amazing book you have there. Okay. That is
yours is a higher grade, and I don't mind this one though.
No, I have a couple others in there, and I don't care what grade this book is in.
Right, it's a beauty.
You know, this is a 53-year-old book. You know, it's 2023, so any grade, that's a good book to have. But no, I'm not the biggest Barry Windsor Smith fan. I bought an X-Men comic book. I love the X-Men, but I don't really collect X-Men. I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I'm a completist, and that's just way too much. But there's one issue that I didn't buy the book because I love the cover. I bought it because it's the worst cover ever. It has Storm on it, and but I'm just not the biggest Barry Windsor Smith fan. But he does have two of my all-time favorite covers with
Oh,
Conan the
me
Barbarian
too.
#1 and 24. Love those
So
covers.
we both picked this one out too, huh?
Well, you got it.
This is probably one of the best covers in comic book history, in my opinion.
Frog Boy. Okay, a lot of you guys know Frog Boy on Instagram. Anyhow, Mark already did one commission for me. He did Conan the Barbarian #1, and this Conan the Barbarian #24 is going to be coming next. That's going to be in a big 24 by 36-inch acrylic painting, and I have a space on my ceiling / wall, whatever you want to call it, way over there. Yeah, it's an angled wall is what it is, but I already have the space already for that Frog Boy painting.
Oh, that'll be incredible. It is one of the best covers in comic history.
Love it. So, anyhow, but after, and then I'll start talking about this, but after issue #8, Conan just seemed to keep on gaining popularity. And for most of the 70s was one of Marvel's biggest sellers. Now, I'm not going to say that it was up there with Spider-Man because he definitely wasn't, but it was continually in that top 5 characters on
Well, and
Marvel's.
part of all their advertising for the company too.
He was.
He was in all the ads, and
he was just a big character that just grew. And honestly, he created the genre, if you will, the sword and sorcery that was around before the comic books, but it really started to flourish with that. And it wasn't just the main title, Conan the Barbarian, which we showed. There were other spin-off titles. There were Savage Tales. Marvel started in the early 70s and during the Bronze Age. They wanted to get away from the Comics Code Authority regulations where, there were certain rules like the bad guy could never not be punished, and there always had to be a good moral theme. Well, real life isn't always like that. And the way they got around it is they started printing magazine-sized comic books.
right?
And because they were not, quote, comic books, they didn't have to follow the comics code. Well, Savage Tales, or forgive me, Savage Sword of Conan was one of the magazines that Marvel put out. And the storylines, honestly, without a doubt, my favorite reads in all of comic history, whether it's Spider-Man or Batman or Superman or whatever, is the Savage Sword of Conan series, which lasted 235 issues. But the stories were gritty, they were real, they were graphic. Conan, was always after the ladies and was, always trying to fight something and trying to not get taken over. But what an amazing series. But so Marvel diversified their Conan lineup, not just the main, the 4 Keller regular comic book, Conan the Barbarian, but started to spread into other types of properties, if you will. But
Well, that and the spinoff of Red Sonja too, and then you had her debut in Marvel Feature, which was her first title for 7 issues there, which the last couple issues crossed into Conan the Barbarian. They had a 5-issue arc together, and then it went into her own title, which lasted, not very long, and went from there to another title, the movie adaptation, the Mary Wilshire title.
We talk about Red Sonja, okay? This is actually kind of the second appearance of Red Sonja. Some people say it's the first full appearance. I don't know what to call it, but anyhow.
No, yeah, 23 is her. She's fully in that whole story.
I 100% agree with that. But anyhow, Frank Thorne is famous for drawing her. Now, this is Barry Windsor Smith, but Frank Thorne put her in this chainmail bikini.
Esteban Morato did that.
Oh, was it? I think you actually told me that once before.
Yep.
He did a Marvel feature.
No, the first her first appearance on the bikini was in Savage Sword of Conan 1, and but she was first put into it by Esteban Morato, who sent the image to Roy Thomas, and Roy Thomas went with it after that.
Okay. I don't like it. I I never did like that chainmail bikini.
So,
I
this is
like
my
her when
favorite
she's in
outfit.
this. Like to me, this is like a good dress for her. Like it's realistic, but it's not. The bikini thing threw me off. Like who goes swimming with metal clothes? Like I don't think that's
Right.
going to float very well, if you ask me. So I'm not a big fan of that. But hey, she is a great character. Now they wanted to. If the character became so popular, they wanted to make a movie, which is kind of what's playing above my left shoulder here. You're right, my left. Yeah, camera's backwards. But anyhow, they came out with Conan the Barbarian in 1982, and that is where I became introduced to this character. And a wonderful character. I remember I was all of 6 years old. Okay, there was no comic book shops in the town I lived in, especially in 1982. It was a small town, just a few thousand people in it. But I remember I was at my grandparents' house for the day, and my grandparents, they had a bar, and Sunday the bar was closed, but we were out hanging. We were hanging out in the bar, in the seats, and there was a big screen TV. In 1982, there weren't very many big screen TVs in existence, but I just remember we were having dinner, chilling out in these nice, comfortable lounge, watching TV, and my mother came and got me, to go home. And I only lived a few blocks from where my grandparents were. And it's just my brother and I are hanging out there for the day. But my mother said, yeah, Conan and Barbarians are going to be starting on TV. And I'm like, hey, what's Conan? I had no idea what Conan was. But then I got home that night and on HBO, Conan the Barbarian came out. And I was just mesmerized by that. I was 6 years old. I don't know if I would have let my 6-year-old when he's 17 now. I don't know if I would have let him watch Conan the Barbarian when he was 6, but the 80s was a different time. Like kids were allowed to have fun and we weren't going to fall apart. But so
Right.
mother let me watch that, and it caught my attention. I was so excited to see that movie.
Well, I actually saw it when it came out. I begged my parents for a week to take me to the movies because by then I was already fully invested in the Savage Sword and Conan the Barbarian. So it was 1982, so I was 12 years old, and I remember we went to a drive-in to see it. So they took me, and it was a double feature. It was Conan the Barbarian and Cheech and Chong Up in Smoke. That was the double header. It made no sense. So
but two awesome movies back to back.
But luckily Conan was first, so I was in the back seat, just in between the seats, just watching it with all the wonder you could have for a 12-year-old, right? Just eating it all up, and the sword, the killing, the story, just everything was capturing your imagination at that age.
Did you have to cover your eyes for a bit?
My parents made me cover my eyes for the witch scene.
Yes. I think that was a rite of passage for every kid that lived through the 80s, because every like big movie had to have a nude scene. So we all had to cover our eyes back then. I tell people that, they're like, what? I'm like, no, it was a thing.
It sure was.
Yeah, it really, every movie. But so, hey, fast forward a couple years later, 1984, another Matt Wood's mother story, and I put the picture together years later, but I think my mother was doing a publisher's clearinghouse. Now, that being said, we always had magazines coming in the house. Okay, like I remember Time magazine being a thing, People, Life magazine always coming in the house, Entertainment Weekly. But my mother said, hey, Matt, do you want to get a comic book subscription? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, what comics are available? And she was giving me a list. And I remember X-Men, I almost got X-Men. There was Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man. And I almost said yes to the X-Men because the X-Men were on one episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And I just thought the X-Men were so cool. But then my mother said, Conan the Barbarian. I was like, whoa, there's a comic book to Conan?
Right.
I was so excited to get that. It took a few months for the first issue to come in the mail. I completely forgot that my mother had got me a subscription to Conan the Barbarian. But my first issue was Ernie Chan cover, Conan the Barbarian 163. This great cover, orange background, and Conan there, he had a battle axe. He was covered in furs. Awesome cover. But the story was so. But I think I read that thing almost till the cover fell off. Okay, I read that thing over and over, and I was I was 7 years old. But I just loved that comic book, and from that point on, I didn't collect all the time, but I always loved Conan. But from that point on, I was absolutely hooked into reading Conan stories.
And Ernie Chan is one of my all-time favorite Conan artists. Yes. He's also one of the best inkers ever, in my opinion, because a lot of people, when they ink, you can't tell it's their inks. Whenever Ernie inked anything, you knew Ernie was the inker. It just, I don't know how he did it. He had his own style. It filled out the characters. It made them, I don't know, more solid in a way. But Ernie Chan was absolutely amazing.
He really was. I wish I would have got that book for this show, because I'm looking at it. It's up on my comic book drawers over there. I just wish I could show people just how amazing it is. But I want to get back to the chat here. I have Pretty Fly for a Filipino guy. Honestly, the next time I get to LA, I am stopping by and we're gonna have coffee and have a sword fight. Okay, Pretty Fly. But he's just such an awesome person. Tina's still here. I saw Seth making a comment about my grandparents' bar and how appropriate that is, because there's now a drinking game that is the name of the drinking game is my name.
Right.
Matt's story time. Yes, Trev, I do tell a lot of stories, okay? But Trev likes it. Mark Andrews is in here. Doug Bratton, guys. I've met Doug, I don't know, a solid handful of times. Doug bought me coffee one time. I'm still super appreciative of it, but he is just such an awesome human being, great person, super talented writer. And then there's Seth. Here's Alan, one of the great comic book crowd co-hosts, just a super great person. I lucked out and I got to meet Alan out in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where he lives. And I had a wonderful time just talking to him. Just such a cool, chill human being. It's kind of fun, Gary. Now I got to meet you in person, but I didn't meet everybody. But there just seems to be, I lucked out and met quite a few different people through just different experiences. Sword fights, you know what? We asked for a sword fight. So here is one sword. Okay, if Gary comes here, I'm going to run him through.
Right.
I got this thing at a yard sale. I think I paid $5 for it. I looked it up. It was a Indian Army, the country of India, Indian Army officer saber. I guess they made hundreds of thousands of those things.
No, that's $5 well spent.
It's a real saber. It does have a point to it, but the blade's very dull. But I was in Japan a few years ago, and I stopped, and this isn't a true katana. I mean, it is a true sword, but it's not, through blacksmithing. This is just stamped steel, but pretty cool. I got this for my son. Nice little handle here. So hit my light. Those are the only swords that I have, Tina, but she definitely wanted to see some swords there. Well, Mark Andrews is still here. Seth. Yes, Tina, we do have swords. Come on, Trev. I still have a pitchfork available here. Gary, did you get to see my pitchfork videos?
I don't think I have.
I played a psycho in a video for Master Blaster because him and Madam have a game of which book is more expensive.
Right.
Well, he started pulling out stamps. Okay, like, and she had to guess which was more expensive, a book or these just random stamps that she hasn't been studying. And I said he was cheating, and I said we're gonna like, storm the castle with torches
Oh,
and
I did see
pitchforks.
that video. You just had to refresh me. Yeah.
Yes, I loved it because I just played like I was a crazy guy, but Pretty Fly, he thinks that I wasn't acting. He told me that. So anyhow, you did kind of start to say about how you were introduced to the character, but how did you first got introduced to comic books, but do you remember what issue it was with your dad's friend's comics that he brought by?
I don't, because I remember 100, but I don't know if 100 is my first one. It's just the one that stuck out to me the most. It very well could have been, but but there was also Savage Swords in there too. So I was eating those up, especially since they were more adult and I was an impressionable youngster. And just and they could show blood and stuff in it too. So Conan could actually just cut through somebody and they didn't have to edit it all the time.
Yes. But
And what I like too is with the depictions, the thing that Roy Thomas did well, and I think the reason the character survived and endured so much is his adaptations were unparalleled. It kept everything that Robert E. Howard wrote in the adaptations. It only changed when it fit the format. So when you read something like Red Nails, which was one of the best comic book adaptations ever, every every beat of Robert E. Howard's story is in that story. Only enhancements are things that add to a comic page.
yes,
And and he didn't do what the movies did, which was dumb down Conan.
no,
Conan's not stupid, and everyone always thinks Conan's dumb. Conan's a thinker, he's a plotter. He became general of many an army. He became a king. Stupid people don't become generals and kings.
no,
They don't lead others into battle. They don't worry about how to keep their armies alive. They don't worry about how they're going to feed them, how they're going to support them. Conan had a conscience. He was a survivor. He had the sheer will of survival, which is one of the reasons I like the one story, The Frost Giant's Daughter. And I almost pulled that cover. It's one of my favorites. And that story is great because it's just Conan's pure will to survive in that story. Every condition in that story is against him, from the cold, giants, a little bit of sorcery with the Frost Giant's daughter.
hmm
Everything is against him, and it's just his pure will to survive that gets him through.
when you read Conan, it is completely different than the movies. Okay, because everything you said is just spot on. Conan, I mean, they kind of made him dim-witted. He didn't have a whole lot of lines, and a lot of that had to do with this actor who spoke Austrian or German with a heavy accent and couldn't speak English very well. But not that Arnold is, dim-witted by any stretch, but they just weren't able to translate that into his intellect into the movies. But the stories, he is everything you said. He's a thinker. He's a plotter. And it comes out in the story. And they're always talking about how he outsmarts his opponents. Like,
And
yes,
he
he's
reads
very physically
situations
strong, but
really quick.
Conan's not a Superman. He's not the strongest person in his universe. He's very strong, but he's not the strongest by any stretch. And he always runs across people who are stronger, but he outwits them. He uses his intellect to get out of situations. And one of the things you read is his never give up attitude, where many other people are giving up and just saying it can't be done. And he is just will to survive. It just makes it such a great story. And you want to follow something like that. You can't wait to see what
Right.
he gets into next.
And that was the one characteristic that him and Cull actually shared. Because Cull was a much hotter tempered character. Cull would flip out instantly and act. He was much more reactionary than Conan. Conan would read the situation and think. Conan had three vices that got him in trouble: drinking, gambling, and women.
Yes. Some of my favorite stories in Conan start out with him in some bar brooding over a, bowl of meal, and then just trouble comes his way, whether he wants to do anything about it.
Now, Doug Bratton asked about the Conan movie with Jason Momoa. Now,
Yes.
that movie gets a lot of hate. But what people need to understand is that the way Jason Momoa looked in that movie is a lot like the way Robert E. Howard wrote Conan.
I would
The
agree
problem
with
with
that.
that movie is not Jason Momoa or his depiction of Conan. The problem with that movie is script. It's not the actors, it's script.
It was boring. Like,
And but he looked more like what Conan wasn't overly built like a bodybuilder.
yes. Now, the opening scene for the Jason Momoa Conan the Barbarian, which Jason Momoa wasn't in it, he was just a boy. And that was such a great opening scene. I was so excited. I saw that movie or that scene before the movie came out. It looked amazing. And I was hoping that the rest of the movie was kind of following after. But honestly, after that opening scene, that movie just kept getting more and more and more boring as it went on. And the acting wasn't bad. It had really good actors in it. It was just a horrible storyline.
Well, what I don't understand is you have what 50 you have 50 years of comics. You have over that of the Robert E. Howard stories, which came out in the 30s. And
Then you
none
have
of
the
these
all
movies,
sprang to camp novels and
right?
the Lynn is it Lynn Carter?
Lynn Carter, yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, his full name was Linwood. Everyone thinks it's a woman, but it's Linwood Carter. Um, but everyone that's made a Conan movie so far, you have all this source material and nobody adapts the story. All the stories are there. Just adapt one of those stories. And well, I'd like to touch on this a second. Like it's still potentially a Netflix show that's being developed, right?
Yeah.
What I would like to see ideally, Matt, is for them to adapt these stories. And this is I think in a streaming service is the perfect way to do it. Give it a Game of Thrones budget,
Whew,
which
that's
Netflix
gonna
would
be
do
tough.
because they're doing that with The Witcher. Why wouldn't they do it with Conan? And you use like set up 3 seasons, right? You go through his different stages. You got young Conan storming the walls of Venarium and then settling out into the world. And then you go through his younger years as a thief and a vagabond. The second season you can move into when he's head of the Corsairs, when he's a pirate, when he's part of the Kozakis, and then year 3 you go into him being a general in the army for Volusia, and
Yes.
then when season 3 ends, it ends with the killing of the king and Conan taking over the crown, and then you start a new season and a
In
new series with
Aquilonia.
King Conan.
But that would be a dream. I don't know if it'll ever happen. I was so excited. Arnie, after he was governor, was going to do Conan the Legend or Conan the King, but it just never did happen. But to get up
They
to the
couldn't get the
chat,
rights settled. They were still flying all over the place.
yeah. To get to the chat, Tina said she asked what the E in Robert E. Howard stood for, and I'm going to be honest with you. I've read it, I know it, but I couldn't
Urban.
remember it. But Mark Andrews saved us.
It's
Okay.
urban. Oh,
Yes, it is
okay, there it is.
urban.
Yep.
But so anyhow, but thanks, Mark, for saving me anyhow, because I would have been like, I just don't remember. But no, that would be great. Now, Marvel Comics, they had Conan the Barbarian series, okay? Or they re-got it back in 2019. January 1st, 2019. They're printing Conan the Barbarian again. They came out the Savage Sword of Conan, and they did Savage Avengers, and Conan was the main character in the Savage Avengers. It was actually a pretty good read.
I was gonna say that I got that because Conan was in it, and that book was way better than it had any right to be. And
I I thought it was going to be goofy. I really did. I was like, they're
Greg
not going
Dugan.
to do it right.
He's the reason it worked. He wrote a fantastic story,
Jim
and
Dugan. Yep.
and at the end of that arc, when that first series completed, it was probably one of the best conclusions to any comic book series I've ever read. It was that good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that series.
And
But
what he did right, if I may, Matt, was
absolutely.
the ending wasn't Conan just being a savage jerk. Conan had heart, and he took this character, which by all rights had made his whole life hell, and gave this character a second chance at a better life with his actions. When everyone thought he was going back to murder him, and Conan did something again that showed his intelligence, showed his compassion, and showed that he's a more complex character than people realize.
But hey, Doug, thanks for stopping by. You have a great day, bud.
Oh, sorry, I'm yapping away, huh?
No, we're both having a, just we're talking about our favorite character here. And actually, I think we're educating a lot of people in the chat. So I think this is pretty good. Now, I'm still finding my way in this whole live streaming thing. I have you do like 3 live streams a week, and you are a complete professional with it. I'm still learning the trade a little bit. But here's Phil's pitch. Okay, Conan in modern day society. Wait, we did that. Savage Avengers, trying to navigate the normal barbarian life in a PC laden culture. Imagine him trying to get a mead at Starbucks. Yeah,
there's a couple what if stories that address that really well.
But no, I think that would be that would be pretty interesting story. They did do Conan in modern day for the What If series back in the late 70s, but that was the 70s where some of it could have actually been realistic, but in today's PC,
those were actually pretty good. And in one of those stories, the cabbie, Danette, was actually named after the girl that at the time Roy Thomas was interested in. He had just met her. He was completely infatuated with her, wrote her into that What If story, and then ended up marrying her later. And they're still married to this day.
I never knew that story. Are you serious?
Yep. The cabbie, Danette, is based on his now wife, and they wrote comics together. They wrote a lot of together. So.
But what a great thing. Did you have any other books you wanted to show today?
Well, what did I have? I think I showed the only thing I showed. I don't have them next to me. I showed the 4 I brought out, but all the rest are in there. So yeah, they're out of reach, so we won't bother.
That's all right. But I have a couple more that I want to show. One of them is one of the ones you did. This Savage Tales of Conan #1. You have one off to CGC. And
I have another one out right now that's a 9/8 candidate.
I know. Because there's not many of these that are 9/8. Wait, where's it at? Can I get it to show? Yeah, there it is. Trying to figure out where my camera's at. There's not many of these that are 9/8. And I have a copy, a raw copy, but it's probably not a 9/8 candidate. I had to go looking for a 9/8 candidate. Took me quite a few years. Now,
magazines, they weren't treated well, right? They were just read.
Yeah, they weren't even collectible comic books. They were magazines that people threw on their coffee tables. But now I had a raw copy of this Savage Tales #1, and this book is a 9/4. But this is a 9/4, and I didn't know what my raw copy would be. So I went looking, and I ended up buying this, honestly, right before it blew up. This book is very popular right now, but not because of Conan. This was the first non-Conan the Barbarian series. This is the first appearance of Man-Thing. And what I really like about that is my Conan the Barbarian #1, Conan the Barbarian #24, I mailed to CGC to have Roy Thomas do a private signing. But this one, I had Roy Thomas sign it, and it's in the trade dress. This was the raw copy that I had for years. I ended up taking it got a chance to talk to Roy Thomas, met him, watched him sign this. But this book came back, signed 9-4.
And that's
I
fantastic.
could not be more pleased. But what'd you say?
I said, and that's fantastic to get that book in a 9-4.
9-4. And not only that, I have 2 of them, Gary. Now,
this is Matt rubbing it in, guys, because this is the only Conan book I will never own because it priced itself out. It is a fantastic book. And it has a black and white story of Man-Thing in the back, which upped its price to astronomical levels.
Yeah, whenever Werewolf by Night came out on Disney Plus last fall, this book blew up overnight. Yeah, and it was gaining steam. It was actually too expensive, but whenever that book came out, it like almost doubled in price.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it did take right off. Now do know
Gary,
that there's a Red Sonja movie coming out on Netflix, right, Matt?
A Conan movie?
No, Red Sonja movie, a new one that's almost done filming.
No, this is news to me, Gary. When is this happening?
Yeah, Netflix is producing it now. It stars Matilda Lutz, and if you want to check out how good she is at action, you need to watch a movie called I think it's called Revenge.
Okay,
but you'll people will look at her and go, "Oh, they just cast someone pretty." No, she can play the tough part. And the first images look amazing, but
Mark's saying it's coming out in 2024. So absolutely looking forward to that. Now, so guys.
Oh, yeah, Revenge it's called.
Revenge. Okay. Guys, I want to clear something up here. All right. People know me as a Conan guy. A lot of people know Gary. Oh, that does look, nice camera movie shot. But a lot of people know Gary through my channel because I'm a Conan guy and vice versa. But I am here to settle this of who the biggest Conan fan in the world is. I am going to kowtow to my good buddy Gary because while I absolutely love Conan and I've read every single thing about Conan out there, it has been maybe 20 years in some cases since I've read some of these stories. Now, Gary, back in college. Now, I married my wife 19 years ago in 2004. Okay. It'll be 19 years next month. Now, my wife and I, we did not live together before, and we had lived in the same town, but we had our separate apartments. And I remember when we got married, I ended up moving into her apartment. Can you hear me?
You're going in and out.
Okay, because my video just went out. But anyhow, I kind of moved into her apartment after we got married, and I still kept mine just because I'd already paid the rent. But I had my long box full of Savage Tales, and that's what I was reading at the time. And she had this amazingly comfortable lounge chair, or a lazy boy recliner. And I was reading those stories, one after another. I remember I'd always wake up first. I'd wake up like 5 a.m, and I'd spend some hours just reading away, drinking coffee. And my point is this. It's been 20 years since I've read some of these stories, or 19 years. I just don't remember them as well as you do. So I am going to say Gary is the world's #1 Conan fan, okay? And that's coming from a pretty big Conan fan to say that.
And that would only last until we got Thorson on stream, and then he would trump us both because that guy is an encyclopedia of knowledge.
I feel like he could give a college class about it, okay? I could give an elementary class. You can give a high school class. He can give a, PhD level college course on that.
Thorson's got us all trumped. He is amazing.
It started to fade whenever I met my wife. but she might not want to let everyone hear what I was going to say. But I don't know, Gary. This has been an absolutely awesome time talking to you. Had a great event, but tell people what you have coming out this week.
Well, this Tuesday we have author of Parallel, Jason Douglas on the 10-1-1. So that's going to be fun. We're going to actually get to see a comic book writer's top 10 comics in his that he loves.
Nice. You're getting some big names
His
on your
personal
10-1-1.
favorites. What's that?
You're getting some big names on your 10-1-1 show.
Well, this is Jason Douglas. This will be like his fourth time on my channel. He's a good guy, great writer. So we got Jason Douglas coming up, and we have in the 10-1-1 we got a lot coming up. So we have Cole, we have TM Nerdy, we got a whole slate of guests coming up.
But you always put out great content. Me this week, I don't know if I'm coming out of the video. I have a handful of videos that I just need time to film them. I'm doing a lot of work where honestly, I'm leaving the house like 7 in the morning and I'm getting home at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So that's about ready to start wrapping up because winter's really my busy time. So
you're supposed to be retired too, Matt.
That's one job, Gary. I still have multiple jobs. Okay. I wish I could be retired for good. That'd be the dream. But again, hey Gary, thanks for coming on. Everyone in the chat, you have been awesome. But guys, I want everyone to have a great night, and thanks for watching, guys.